tragic night, February 12, 2009, when Colgan Air Flight 3407 fell from the sky, crashing into a home on Long Street in Clarence Center, claiming the lives of 50 people, including one on the ground. This event not only changed the world for the families of the victims forever, the families have been working hard to change the world for air travelers, joining forces with lawmakers, fighting for tougher federal aviation safety regulations, including a requirement that pilots log 1,500 flight hours in order to receive an airline pilot certificate, a cause the Western New York delegation and Senator Charles Schumer have embraced.
They are our inspiration. They are our inspiration. I get a little choked up when I think of their losses and their strength. Haven't seen them in a while, so it's a little bit new to me again. So I thank you all for being here and for what you have done to make America a safer place.
Recently, this fight took on more punch when Miracle on the Hudson pilot and aviation expert Chesley Sully Sullenberger joined the families to push the FAA in implementing these new rules. Before meeting with the families and officials in Washington, D.C., he visited the Clarence crash site and talked about joining their mission.
Why in the world would airline industry executives with their industry trade associations want to roll back safety standards? That seems incomprehensible. It seems counterintuitive. But you have to realize what an intensely cost-competitive business this is. And there's still too many in industry who view safety improvements as only a regulatory burden, as only an additional cost. And so I stand with Senator Schumer and the families, and I can't thank the families enough for being such effective, ardent, tireless advocates. I admire everything that you've done. To remind everyone that in an industry that often gives pilots and mechanics and others only the minimum amount of training that's required by regulation, giving them only the minimum amount of rest to meet the new fatigue rules, doing nothing extra. We need to make sure the minimums are actually sufficient. And let me tell you that 250 hours total time to be an airline pilot is laughable. It wasn't that many years ago that if you tried to apply for an airline job with that amount of time, they would laugh you out of the office. They'd say, come back when you have some real experience. Had I had someone with me on Flight 1549 less experienced than Jeff Skiles, who also has 20,000 hours of flying time, who had also been a captain before the most recent round of cutbacks, we could not have had the same outcome. Because I didn't have time in that pressure cooker to tell him what to do, to direct his every action. He had to know what he needed to do to assist me, to help us make the right decisions to have the best outcome. So to those in the industry who think that these safety requirements are too high, or too costly, or too inconvenient, I'd say come here to Buffalo. Come here to the crash site of Flight 3407. See the memorial, see the faces of those who've been lost, meet the families, those who have lost so much, and then you will understand what we unfortunately already know. That when it comes to costs, the real costs, the human costs of not having the highest level, one level of safety, is a cost no family should ever have to bear. Thank you.
For more on what the families of the victims are doing to make the sky safer, go to 3407memorial.com. John DeSciullo for Talk of the Town.
Now, Kim, to put it in perspective, airline travel is one of the safest ways to get around in this country. I mean, the last time there was an accident in this country that included a fatality, I can't remember, it might have been 3407, and that was years ago. The equipment has gotten better, the technology has gotten better, the training has gotten better. What they were addressing there, and what is the problem, obviously, if you've lost somebody in an aircraft accident, it doesn't matter how safe typically it is, your experience is tragic, it's different, it's emotional, and you want changes. You want to prevent what happened to your loved one from ever happening again, and that's very understandable. They petitioned for changes to the rules of training for airline pilots.
They? Who is they?
The families of the victims of 3407, they formed a group and they continuously went to Washington to lobby and talk to the legislature about how the rules currently are, well, how they were at the time. And typically, going back as far as I can remember, even when I was in high school, that's when I got my pilot's license. And I looked into becoming an airline pilot. And you can start out with 250 hours, but you don't command an aircraft at 250 hours. And you don't command a commercial airliner. What you do typically back then is you would go, they would hire you with 250 hours worth of training, then the airlines would put you through their own program and get you to the point where they could put you on a smaller aircraft with a more experienced pilot. And so you learned from that more experienced pilot and you grew.
You were an apprentice of sorts.
Exactly.
Until the airlines felt you were ready.
Right.
And then the families from Clarence went ahead and lobbied for a change there.
They wanted, well, what happened that night with 3407 is they had two pilots that were inexperienced to a great degree, which was against most major airline policies, but I guess with commuter airlines, they're a little bit looser. Aviation is a very difficult business to be in and make money. And so when you run a small airline, a commuter airline, you tend to cut corners a little bit. You try not to compromise safety. But on this particular night, there was a combination of two pilots in the cockpit who were not experienced.
And so that lobby changed the law so that it would currently be.
They lobbied Congress to change it so that you would have to have 1,500 hours in order to be hired by an airline. And that the airlines kind of push back on that because there's not a lot of people that have that experience. Typically, they'll take ex-fighter pilots who have a lot of jet experience.
So that 1,500 hours made it impossible to have that situation that was created with the flight here in Clarence.
Well, it would minimize the chances. Still, it's possible to put two pilots together that are not good at what they do, and that's part of the problem. When you have a pilot that continually fails his flight tests, there's a problem with letting him continue on and until he gets it right.
And then this rally that we just saw here, this rally just happened in Western New York. This is a new rally because there's a lobby to change the laws that brought in that 1,500-hour minimum. Right. And so what is this pullback that's happening?
With the vast changes in the makeup of Congress after this last election, the airlines thought that they could renew an effort to lobby Congress to roll back the rules to where they were, the 250 hours.
Instead of the 1,500.
And the people who fought so hard to get that changed, they don't want to have that come up. They don't want to have that be a possibility. And so that's what they're fighting. Nobody has said that they're going to change it, but they want to reaffirm with the new Congress that they fought hard for this. This is the way it should be. And
so they're continuing to be a strong lobby for that 1,500 hours and for the safety on board.
Yes. Accidents do happen. We just want to minimize them. And as I said, technology has helped. The equipment is vastly more sophisticated than it was even 10 or 15 years ago. So there is progress, and aviation has become extremely safe if you see the statistics. But it can always have improvement. I mean, it's nothing is perfect, but you keep working at it.
And how wonderful that the folks here in Western New York are lobbying to keep that safe.
Well,
So-
they have a cause, they have a purpose, and it's very understandable.
Yeah. Well, we'll be back.